At Cape Kennedy, Florida, a vast Saturn V rocket rolls out of the vehicle assembly building and makes its ponderous way to the launch pad. In December this year, it'll carry the crew of Apollo 17 to the moon. It'll be America's 6th moon landing, and for the foreseeable future at least, the last.
Hey, there's a good place to whack. Something to lean on.
By the time the Apollo 17 astronauts get back to Earth, the United States will have spent over $25,000 million on its manned spaceflight programs. For this staggering sum, the immediate returns may not seem very great. 300 or 400 pounds of moon rock, over 7,000 man-hours in space, and a much wider knowledge of the structure and history of the moon.
Man, the matrix is so fine-grained I can't tell, Tony. But it's definitely got a blue cast to it, and there are inclusions of...
Against this, members of the space lobby in Washington argue that the longer-term benefits from Apollo, though less visible, are far more important. The industrial and technical spin-off from space, they say, is keeping America ahead in a whole range of technologies, from metallurgy to fuels. Their arguments haven't been entirely convincing to the American public or to Congress. 2 moonshots have been cancelled, and the budget for NASA, the National Aeronautical and Space Administration, has been progressively reduced in recent years. Today, at $3,000 million, it's only 3/5 of what it was in the peak year of 1965. The results of the cutback can be seen here at the Cape, where some of the launch pads and gantries have been put up for sale. There are no immediate plans for any more manned flights to the moon or into deep space, and the grandiose talk of a few years ago of manned flights to the nearest planets has quietly been abandoned. In the follow-up programs to Apollo, NASA will be putting its money into activities which the public can more readily see to be of some practical value. These will include unmanned probes and weather and communications satellites. Manned space flights will still take place, but the emphasis will shift from space exploration to space exploitation, research into how man can use the unique properties of a zero-gravity environment to develop new industrial and technological processes. This will be the main objective of Skylab, America's first manned Earth orbital space station.
Skylab will be launched in 1973.
Skylab will be launched in the spring of next year. Over a period of several months, 3 three-man crews will live and work in Earth orbit for weeks at a time on separate missions, collecting experimental data on behalf of the world's top scientists.
And will interpret the results.
The Skylab program will use much of the Apollo hardware. It'll be launched by a 2-stage Saturn rocket. In what is normally the 3rd stage will be the assembled components of Skylab. The crew will travel separately in a Saturn 1B rocket.
Skylab components will be assembled prior to launch.
Skylab will be launched first and will go into orbit 235 miles above the Earth at a 50-degree angle to the equator. In this attitude, it will scan 3/4 of the Earth's surface.
And in fact, over about 75% of the entire surface of the Earth. After reaching orbit, the protective fairing
On reaching orbit, the protective fairings will be jettisoned, and Skylab will automatically deploy mounts for its 4 telescopes, as well as solar panels through which the sun's radiation will be converted to electricity to power the laboratory.
Sunlight into electricity to operate the telescopes and provide power for the rest of the laboratory.
2 days after Skylab's launched, the first crew will dock their spacecraft alongside and transfer to the laboratory. The first crew will spend 28 days here, the second and third crews 56 days. Skylab's systems will be closed down for the periods between missions.
Skylab will fly unmanned between missions. The living areas and primary
Within
work
the
areas
orbital
of
workshop,
Skylab are on
living
two
and
levels
working areas
within
are
the
on
orbital
2
workshop.
levels. On this level, there are 4 rooms. This is the wardroom where
On
the
this
crew
level,
will
there
eat
are
and
4
relax.
rooms. This is a wardroom where the men will eat and relax.
A window will provide a spectacular view of the Earth when the laboratory is on the Earth's sunlit side. The double panes will be of high optical quality, and heaters will prevent it from fogging. During their off-duty hours, the crew will enjoy reading, listening to taped music and radio from Earth, and will also be able to communicate with their families.
And will communicate with their families. Food
for 140 days of manned operations will be stowed prior to launch, most of it in these lockers. The food preparation area of the wardroom is similar to an earthbound kitchen. Special trays will warm the food, and the men will eat in much the same way as commercial airline passengers.
Will warm the food, and the men will eat from them much as do commercial airline passengers.
There are 3 separate sleeping compartments in Skylab. In the weightless conditions of space, there is no up or down. The astronauts will simply climb into a sleeping bag and hang suspended. The bags have adjustable restraints to prevent their occupants from floating about whilst asleep.
No up or down.
Garbage, waste paper, soiled clothing, and so on will be placed in a storage tank.
Will be bagged and placed into a storage tank.
This is the bathroom. Basically, washing and bathing will be done with a hand sponge, but other methods will be tried.
Samples of urine will be frozen. All fecal matter will be dried.
Samples of urine will be frozen. All fecal matter will be dried, and most of it will be stored in containers and returned to Earth for analysis.
And placed into the storage tank.
The floor and ceiling in Skylab is made of open mesh to allow good air circulation. Specially designed shoes will hook into the mesh. Without them, the astronauts would find it difficult to stay in one place.
Without them, it is difficult to stay in one place.
All of Skylab's facilities have been thoroughly tested on the ground. Last month, 3 astronauts completed 56 days in a simulation chamber at Houston. The mock-up Skylab was only 70 feet long, and the astronauts were clearly happy to escape from its confines and meet their families. The test run cost $3 million, but NASA scientists were well pleased with the results. None of this crew will actually go into space for the real Skylab, but for those who will, Carol Bobko had some reassuring news.
I think the Skylab crews that will find that their home away from home is really quite livable. 56 days is certainly not a short time, but as Crippen had said, it wasn't as difficult as we all had anticipated. And as everybody has said before, the support we received from the outside certainly made a difference to make us feel as if we were well helped inside. It's nice to be home. Thank you.
In each mission, 50 scientific investigations will be performed involving all kinds of materials and the men themselves. At intervals during each flight, the metabolic rates of each astronaut will be recorded at rest and during exercises on a bicycle ergometer. This records the amount of energy being used, while a metabolic analyzer records the volume and constituents of exhaled breath. These tests will show how weightlessness affects breathing and how much or how little energy is needed to breathe in a zero-gravity environment.
Cannot be used. But there is
Determining weight in a weightless world is a real problem. With no gravity, there's no weight, and normal scales can't be used. But there is mass, and many biochemical experiments require its measurement.
Skylab, this device will be used.
This device measures small
Using a
masses
known
in
mass,
Skylab.
the device will be
Using a
calibrated
known
in
mass,
flight,
the device
later
will be
used to determine
calibrated
the
in
mass of
flight
food intake
and later used
and
to
of
determine the
excrement.
masses of food intake and
The object to be
excrement.
measured is placed
The
in a
object to be
holder
measured is
held by
placed in a
rod
holder
suspended on
and
a
held
spring.
by springs.
By releasing a
By
lever,
releasing a
pendulum
lever,
cycle
a
is set up.
pendulum cycle is set
The
up.
time of each
The
cycle
length
is
of the
precisely
cycle will
measured
be
and is
proportionate to the mass of the
proportional to
object.
mass of the object.
So sensitive is the device, it can even
The
weigh a
device is
postage
so
stamp.
sensitive, it can even weigh a postage stamp. This odd-looking chair
This
will be used to
odd-looking
weigh the
chair will
astronaut.
be used to measure the
It
mass
works on
of the
the same
astronauts
principle as the small
themselves.
device,
It works
but
on
the man
exactly the
sits
same
in as
principle as the
immobile a
small
position as
device.
possible,
The
even
man
holding
sits
his
in the
breath.
chair in as immobile a position as possible,
In
even
this
holding his
experiment, the
breath.
split seconds are monitored and displayed electronically.
The
time it
pendulum
takes for the
motion is
pendulum motion
recorded,
is recorded,
and from this, the
and from
subject's
this,
mass is
the
calculated.
subject's mass is
The
calculated.
chair is restrained by a
chair is
spring,
restrained by
and
a
a gentle
spring.
push is sufficient
Here,
to
too,
set
a
up the
slight
motion.
mechanical push establishes a pendulum action. The greater the mass of the subject, the slower the movement of the chair. Before and after each
mission, extensive tests will be carried out on each astronaut to find changes in bone calcium, muscle strength, and blood circulation and composition.
blood circulation and constituents.
The results of similar tests carried out in mock-ups prior to launch will be compared with the actual
Will
Skylab
be used to
findings.
compare with actual Skylab medical findings on many zero-G reactions of the human body. From spatial orientation to motion sickness.
This instrument
This
will
equipment
measure
will
the
be used
effects
to
of
study the
prolonged
effects of
weightlessness on
prolonged
human
weightlessness
cells.
upon
Though
individual
no
human
bigger than a
cells.
shoebox, the case packs in an amazing
In the black
amount of
box are
scientific
laboratory
equipment,
instruments
including
skillfully
microscopes and
miniaturized
cameras.
for use on a spaceship.
On the right is a
right is a
normal
regular
microscope
Earth
camera
laboratory
and lens.
microscope camera and
On the
lens.
left, the
On the
Skylab
left, the
equivalent
Skylab
takes up a
equivalent
small
takes up
space
a
inside the
small space
container.
Inside the container. In one compartment
On
of the
this side of
compact
the
box
package are two cameras with lenses magnifying 20 times and 40 times.
With lamps,
There are also
16mm
lamps,
motion picture
16 millimeter film, and a motor to move the film in front of the lens.
The human kidney cells to be photographed are in two chambers at one end. At regular intervals,
Human kidney
time-lapse
cells
motion
will be
pictures
fed
like these
nutrient
will be
pumped
taken.
in through tubes.
They may
And
reveal
at regular
zero
intervals,
gravity-induced
time-lapse
changes in cell
photographs
behavior,
will reveal
such
any
as in the
changes that
reproductive
occur due to
process.
the zero-gravity
The living
environment.
cells are fed
The cells
nutrients
will
pumped in
eventually
through
return
tubes.
to Earth for
They will
further
be returned to
observation.
Earth for continuing observation. In the compartment on the other side
On the other
of
side of the container are two biopacks, each holding thousands of human lung cells at normal body temperature. At preset times, the astronauts will fix these cells in order to preserve them at various stages of their growth.
All the cells fixed and
All the
living,
cells and their film
exposed
record
film
will be
brought
returned
back
to Earth for study and
individual cells
evaluation.
will be carefully studied for any changes from the norm, for instance in their chromosomes or metabolism.
All
All
life is
is
affected by
influenced by
gravity,
gravity.
and by removing its influence on
removing
human
gravity from
cells,
living
the
cells,
basic
the
units of
simplest
human
units of
material,
human material,
scientists hope to find new
Scientists
clues
hope
to the
find
nature of
new
the life
clues
process.
To the nature of the life process. Various experiments with materials and processes will also be tried on Skylab missions.
Skylab will also test the
Experiments never
effects
before
of zero
possible will be
gravity
conducted
on all kinds
in
of
the sustained
materials
zero
as well as
gravity.
men. For example, the
Here
growth
are
of crystals
crystals
on
growing in a
Earth is
laboratory
limited by
on
the
Earth.
effects of gravity.
Their growth seems to be shaped and limited by the effects of gravity.
In Skylab, a single crystal in solution will be
Skylab
placed in a
experiment,
chamber
a
and
single
its temperature
crystal in solution
monitored
inside
throughout
a
the
sealed
mission.
container
It's hoped
will
that
be placed inside
near-perfect
the
crystals
chamber,
can be produced
and
in a
its
weightless
temperature monitored
environment.
during the
If they
mission.
can, they would be of great value to science and industry.
It is hoped that near-perfect crystals can be produced in a weightless environment that will have extensive value in science and industry.
Similarly, it's believed that almost perfect spheres can be made in zero gravity.
When a metal sphere is formed
When a
on
sphere
Earth,
is made on
the weight
Earth,
of the molten
gravity
metal
creates
leads to
distortion.
distortion
A
as it
sphere which
solidifies.
doesn't need a machine to make it
A
perfectly
sphere which
round
does not
has
require
many
machining
industrial
to make
and
it perfectly
technological
round,
possibilities.
has many industrial and technological possibilities.
The astronaut scientists of Skylab will also try to find out more about how a flame reacts when there's no gravity to cause convection currents. Several different materials will be ignited and photographed.
Several different kinds of material will be ignited, observed and photographed by the astronauts. For fabrication or
Another
repairs in
experiment will
space,
explore the possibilities of
welding or
welding
tube joining
metals
be
in
done
space,
using an
where
electron
gravity
beam
will not cause
or
molten
other heat
metal
source of
to
a
run
kind that
off
does
as
not
it does
cause
on Earth.
melting, which is hard to control without gravity.
Scientists are also wondering whether totally new compounds can be made when the effect of gravity is removed from atomic constituents.
From gravity in the formative stages.
The sun and its behavior will be a major study on Skylab. The radiation sent out by this churning nuclear furnace will be studied in many wavelengths. Solar flares, violent explosions on the sun's surface, will be recorded in detail. Scientists are hoping the experiments will answer several questions. For example, the surface of the sun is about 10,000 degrees, but the corona, the arc of burning gases that surrounds it, is 2 million degrees. How does such a relatively cool surface generate so much heat? How do solar flares occur? What causes them? What is the source of their energy? And why does their frequency vary according to an 11-year cycle? Skylab will provide valuable data which may help to answer these questions. The area from the surface of the sun to the edge of the corona is about 2.5 million miles. It'll be studied intensively to see how energy is transferred through it. The really big flares don't happen very often, but when they do, they happen suddenly. Skylab's astronauts will have spent hours in training for just such an eventuality.
Studies will be made during the entire Skylab mission.
They'll immediately train their telescopes on that particular area of the sun's surface, and they'll maintain a close and continuous liaison with scientists and astronomers on Earth.
Precisely to selected areas of the sun and the gases that surround it, and hold the entire laboratory steady while the radiation.
The sun dominates the solar system, and life on Earth in all its forms depends on it. Skylab will provide the opportunity for studying its effects on the Earth's atmosphere. It will also give men experience in operating sophisticated instruments in a space environment.
Around the world, when their detection of solar activity requires Skylab's closer look.
The third major area of research in the Skylab program concerns the Earth itself. From almost 250 miles out in space, many problems concerning the Earth's environment appear far more clearly than they do on the ground. Skylab's Earth Resources package will scan the Earth and measure moisture in soil and contamination in water. It will discover new underground rivers and springs and measure the heat output of whole cities.
From detection of underground and under-ocean rivers and springs of fresh water,
simultaneous photographs of the same areas will be taken in different wavelengths. The objective will be to find out what film and filters are the best to use for conveying various information about Earth resources. Teams on the ground will check the same areas to ensure the accuracy of Skylab's findings.
By air and space scanners.
This was indicated by the preliminary analysis. Corn blight during the 1971
The practical results of all this work could be tremendous. Farmers could be told about future crop diseases long before the symptoms become apparent on the ground. And at best, Skylab could provide a World Agricultural Survey every week. It could provide advance information on pastures for cattle and on the courses taken by shoals of migrating fish.
We shall get current data on the locations of migrating fish.
Collected by these flights is
All kinds of information of this nature could be put together so that man could use the Earth's resources more efficiently and with less abuse than he does at present.
Geology, oceanography, and urban development.
We will gain
Skylab will not in itself solve Earth's problems, but if it proves that man can live and work comfortably in a weightless environment, the first steps will have been taken towards the exploitation of inner space. There's no telling where the
NASA is
possibilities
providing
might
America's
eventually
first
lead.
experimental
But
space
if
station
Skylab
to open
fulfills
new
only a
opportunities
fraction of the
for
scientists'
research
hopes,
and application
it'll prove itself to be the most
that will enrich
profitable
the lives
scientific
of all the
investment
billions of
any
people
country has
on
ever
Earth.
made.